So welcome everybody. My name is Chris Elgee. I'm a SANS instructor and a penetration tester for Counter Hack Challenges, and I have with me here today my best friend Sean Atkinson.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Great to be here with you. Appreciate it, my friend.
And just so you know who this guy is, he's actually the CISO for the Center for Internet Security. So if you think of the organizations that develop standards for us, that help secure elections and all those wonderful tasks, like he's the guy who defends that organization. So CISO of CISOs, if you will.
Wonderful. Appreciate it. It's a lofty title, but from a friend, I'll take it.
Well earned indeed. So we're going to start early with a question here, Paul, and it's what exactly is pen testing? Because that's the focus of our talk tomorrow, is what exactly it is. People have lots of different ideas about what that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in some cases people see it as a checkbox, right? It's that compliance element. But personally, for me, it's a definition of organizational risk. Where do I see gaps within my infrastructure, and who do I want to find those gaps and provide recommendations that we can then iterate over time? That's a pen test in my mind.
Right, and I'm hoping the audience here agrees. Like, this should be the gimme, and it looks like we're rocking about 100%. Oh no, I'm starting to lose a little bit there.
50-50.
Because I mean, in my mind too, that's my job, is to come and do whatever I can to demonstrate an organization's risk, and not I can find shells, or I found this weird CVE, but where are you vulnerable? Where can I get in before the bad guys?
Exactly right. And what we need to do in that space, though, is collaborate, right? In some cases, it's going through that process to find the gaps. It's not about the CVEs, but when they're found, that's awesome. Let's celebrate that, but understand what we need to then do to fix it, right? We want to see that level of expertise in the environment from our penetration testers. That then allows us to iterate our underlying program. That moves us to a greater level of maturity and in a quicker way. And so, ultimately you'll ask the question, who do I want doing that? The adversary or my best friend? Do you know what I mean? So you've got to get to that level where we can cooperate, integrate, and really then start to motivate each other to be better, right? Because that's one of the things we do is, what do I tell you every year? I say next year it's going to be harder, right? That's the goal, right? And we'll add a touch of gamification to it. And, when did you detect me? I need to know, here's all the things we're doing. Here's how we caught you. And then when we don't catch you, nice, you can bring that back. We share. Yeah. And that's what makes it fun in a lot of cases, right?
It is, yeah. And I say this sometimes, I love and hate working with organizations like yours, because I like one major source of burnout from pen testing, no kidding, is when you come back to the same organization year after year and you find the same issues that aren't getting resolved, and you get stuck in this mindset, why am I doing this? But at the same time, when they do take those recommendations every year and it gets harder and harder, then I've got to up my game, which is great, but love and hate.
Ultimately, that's the expectation, though, right? It is, we can't do the same thing over and over and not learn from it. If we're not learning anything from it, there's no point doing it. That's your checkbox approach, right? We've got to move away from that. We've got to look and define risk so that we can approach it together. And that's the most important part. It's a partnership. It's, you're paying for these services and you want to have, obviously, the best result from them. If you're not going to do anything with the recommendations, to your point, what's the point? And then you come back and it's like, well, there's not even a challenge here. You need to up your skills in order to keep up, and we need to up our skills to keep up with you. That's the whole point. And that, I think, makes us better as organizations. But representatively, we need to get everybody in the same mindset so that we can then start moving this agenda of security from being this defender's dilemma to really a shared partnership, to where we can then move into an approach that is, in a lot of cases, shared. I would say this. So as we move through organizational risk, it puts us in a position where we can then aggregate together those successes, those where we're not reached, really are owned in a lot of cases. Because without your help, we're not better. And then ultimately, as we get better, I think that looks good on you guys too, right? That's where we see, look, here's an organization that's done what we've said. Here's our recommendations. Here's our improvements.
You might say we're stronger together.
I wonder if that's a moniker here at the RSA conference. Do you think that's a tagline?
I think they might have poached a little bit from our talk.
Maybe. I think that came from us, but yeah, exactly right.
So as we keep going, as we start talking about how to set up a pen test, we have another poll here about exactly how much should be shared. Because as a pen tester, when we're scoping and doing the rules of engagement, we see the gamut. We see the organization who says, I'm going to give you as little as possible, and then we see the organization who says, here's everything, please find what's there.
Yeah, I mean, here's a thought. Now, there is some engagement that you would start and you want to maybe test the assessment and the capabilities of a representative organization.
Sure.
So start at, kind of the opaque box perspective.
Yeah. With recon, yeah.
Exactly. Do the recon, what's out there, how can you find us, right? Through the internet, through all of these, the ethereal, as it were. But then as that moves forward, and I would say with the rules of engagement as the exercise, is to then start sharing information. This is what we found. Okay, now here's the network diagram. Here's some targets of opportunity. And I want to assess what can you do. And then we start to share more. Now, in our case, the number of years, the long relationship that we've had, that recon piece is still there, but it's complete sharing, right? There shouldn't be anything necessarily hidden. I'm paying you to find everything. And in a lot of respects, that's what I would like to see really the world take into a perspective, and a lot of CISOs to say, okay, here's what's needed, here's how we improve. We have to do that together, and that's information sharing without question.
Right. And I think I understand the perspective of the organization that's more the opaque, the zero knowledge pen test, right? I get it that they consider that to be what the adversary begins with. But there are a lot of false assumptions there about that the adversary isn't already in your organization or isn't just looking across the internet for people with your specific vulnerability, right? A lot of that recon stuff just it's not the same with the actual attackers. So.
Exactly right. And I think it's best to put it in the perspective and the mindset, like of an adversary. Absolutely right. That makes a ton of sense. But then ultimately, I want more from you than an adversary, as it were, because you've got necessarily a shortened time frame. They've got, we're looking at statistics, 277 days before they're found. Yep. You guys have got 2 weeks. So let's up your game and give you enough to start assessing our organization and getting us to a point where we've built the security, we're mitigating risk, or we identify risk at least.
So as we think about what the product is that the CISO wants from the pen testers, there are a lot of different opinions on methodology and what that should look like. So it could be a full play-by-play of what the pen tester did through the engagement, or it could just be like a copy-paste block. And I've worked for organizations that do both ways. What do you like to see on a pen test report?
I like to see more of the detailed approach, and I'll give you the reason why. I think the lessons learned from that detailed approach helps influence our internal assessment capability as well as our internal penetration systems. In a lot of cases, we're using that to learn your tactics, techniques, and procedures that you've applied. We need to be doing the same thing internally, right? And having that detailed capability, in a lot of cases, for me, is a playbook. That's what we then should be applying over time, because necessarily I'm learning from the best in the world, and it's sat right next to me. So that's what we need to do.
So, and as pen testers, we might push back because one, it's hard, right? It's a lot to write up, and if there's anything we don't like about our job, it's reporting. To be real honest. And then two is what you touched on there is that it feels like we're giving up part of our secret sauce, but I don't think that's true, right? I don't think us telling you how we did it makes you less likely to bring us back, right?
Absolutely not. I think full disclosure is that's where you start to create the relationship. That's where it is. We can't have the siloed method of, well, I'm going to protect our infrastructure by being the guard and just saying, external recon, if you can't find anything, thank you very much, shake of a hand, that's the pen test. And then respectfully, your own tactics, techniques, and procedures, let's share them, right? Let's understand the approach. Because we're, again, I'll do the grown stronger together on this piece, but that's what makes this an engagement where your return on investment is the highest, right? I know what's happening. I know where my guys need to be. So is that training? Is that access to systems? Is that the same information I've provided you to give to them as well? And just create a narrative that allows us all to move forward. Let's identify this risk and let's resolve it.
And I'm not sure if we got full results on the methodology question or if we shot that up there. Oh, there we go. So, all right. So in terms of scoping, it seems like there's still a split there. And then let's put the next question too about how thorough the pen test report methodology should be. Which again, it's hard for us, but I think it provides value.
Absolutely does. I mean, if you're in a lot of cases, and again, I get the reporting piece, completely understand, but really, I think that talks to the seasoned veteran in this space as being able to provide a report that this is another tactic that's very good. So in terms of the executive summary, that's written for, let's say, a C-level. But when I get into the technical pieces, that's where we can start to break down and share information, so share tactics, techniques. in a lot of cases, Chris, and this may be a little bit unusual, but I also like to make available the internal penetration testers to the external penetration testers as another form of training. This allows cooperation between the teams and also information sharing. Nothing's off the table. We've got to find these issues as quickly as possible because the adversary is out there looking for the same thing. I'd rather it be my best friend than the adversary. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then it looks like here that we've got, my eyesight isn't quite as good as my friends here, but we got, all right, so the people responding to the poll then agree. They want to see the step by step. And if you don't, you can always skip it, right?
You can. I think the approach, though, is that exactly right. And I love the fact that we're seeing step by step. It makes a lot more sense, and the granularity and the elements of understanding. Because in some cases, being blue, am I envious of red? Absolutely. Red's the sexy job, right? It's the pen tester and doing all that. Exactly.
We're the jocks. We're the InfoSec jocks.
Exactly right. And so everybody wants to be the cool kid. What are the cool kids doing, and how can I learn? I don't think there's a better methodology than reflecting your own systems, which you necessarily should understand, but then also seeing how those are bypassed and allowing us to then cooperate through that. The one caveat is, and I'll just bring this up real quick, is you have to have the right partner in that space. In a lot of cases, if you're giving all of the information and then ultimately the pen test comes back and it's basically an executive summary and screenshots of a vulnerability scanner and that's it. That's not a good relationship, but there's contributions back from Blue. I need to see detail. I need to understand what you're doing in this space. If all you're doing is vulnerability scanning, that's not penetration testing. And that's been, maybe that's going back 5-10 years in terms of the old adage, but if that still exists,
I think it does.
That's a huge problem because you're not getting any value. You're not identifying. I could do this work, right? And then I could have the full job and just call myself a pen tester, but I can't because that's not what pen testing is. And so we've reflectively that detailed report just, in some cases, I think it just also shows the capability of the respective team being able to communicate that. Huge, absolutely fantastic.
So our next poll gets to kind of the reverse of that is how much does the CISO share during an engagement, right? Should you let us know when you've detected us, when you've blocked a thing, or should you just keep silent and just kind of see how we
This is my perspective. And again, I think everybody's going to know where I'm going with this, but it's complete sharing is...
Cat's out of the bag.
Exactly. Cat's out of the bag is we've got to share this information and be collaborative. That's either daily meetings or let's do a stand-up in the morning and we'll do a review in the afternoon, what was found, any issues, concerns. Because really I want to make your experience as clean as possible. Then also when we identify where we've got good protection, right? There's good controls. Okay, let's throw me a white card. I need to move on to the next layer of your defense.
Right.
That's what I do. That's the reason why we need to do that is because ultimately we may have strong defenses today. Tomorrow that could be a completely different story.
Sure.
So I need you to go through all of my layers in order to understand where I'm good, where's the gaps, where's my risk, what's the medium.
And at the same time, we the pen testers can't just do the root dance because you let us pass the control, right? Or because you forwarded us an alert. We have to acknowledge that. And if you're a pen tester and you're not putting in positive findings in your report, you're really leaving a big piece out. I think you need to say, hey, we tried this and we failed and you let us pass. And this is a very positive finding, right?
Absolutely. You want to get that feedback, and as quickly as possible. So we, go through sharing those stand-ups. What's the issue? What are we going to do to move forward? Doing that allows us then to either internally reorganize and work with you while you're still here and say, oh, what's a recommendation in this case? What are we missing? Where's the gap? And doing that personally is way better than reading the report 5 to 6 months after and what was the context of this? I have no idea. Let me read the report. If it's not a detailed report, now where are you? I'm going to have to call you up for more hours, right?
So a bit of disagreement here in the crowd. I think some people want to know what was caught. And then some people want to know like as it comes in. So at least no one's at mum's the word. I'm happy with that.
No, I think this is great. I think at the end of each day, absolutely makes sense. But as you start alerting on things, I think that's great too. That to me adds a layer of the gamification, as I mentioned. Oh, you were caught. Oh, you were bypassed. That's awesome. That allows us to build a camaraderie that says, okay, we're moving in the right direction. We're doing this in a collaborative approach. Where then ultimately stronger together through that process. I've said it 3 times now, so I'll go for the top 5.
Yeah, and of course that gives us, when you give us that immediate alert, then that lets us really test defense in depth, right? Because you really want to know, like you're saying, all layers.
Exactly right.
So our last poll question is about how much we should share. Should we just send you the report when we're done? Should we let you know before we try, the eternal blue exploit? How open should we be? How frequently should we check in?
Yeah, ultimately there's a tolerance there, because I think for some of the major pieces, that's an immediate alert that you have a potential exploitable vulnerability in your systems. We've got to work together to get that fixed. That's major right now. And ultimately, what are we doing? We're looking at your experience, and if you say this is an immediate action, here's your critical, okay, that's fair enough. Hands on the table, let's move forward, let's get hands on keyboards, eyes on screen to get this fixed. Ultimately, it really, though, depends on the engagement and where the scope is as well, right? Obviously, it has to be contextualized. But I've always found, working each day, as these alerts come up and are found, let's share. And you really start to create a narrative. In some cases, you build that over time in terms of the relationship. And you get to kind of figure out what's the best cadence of discussion and review, but minimum daily, minimum. And then ultimately, if you see an element of vulnerability or exploitability, that's when we have to move forward quicker. But we do it together, right? I mean, that's how we should be doing it, and it just works in everybody's favor. Now, ultimately, it may be, well, I want to use this major issue in order to then bypass extra layers of control.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's do it in a controlled process. Let's follow my tolerance, right? I may not necessarily have the appetite to leave the firewalls on, and everybody's in and out. Data's being exfilled like crazy. All right, then maybe we probably say, okay, hold on, let's get this fixed, and basically make you part of the incident response team and get it moving forward.
Yeah, and I will be honest here too. I've been that pen tester before, where there was a new exploit in an edge router device, and the results would either be, from what I've read, it would either give me a shell, it would do nothing, or it would DOS the device. So it would lock up, and I would love to tell you that what I did was I called the client, said, hey, I'm about to try this thing, is now a good time? I didn't. Young and foolish, first year pen testing, and I fired the thing, nothing happened. I fired the thing again, and suddenly I couldn't connect to the client anymore. So you can guess what the result was. So good, but good contact info. Exactly. Called them right up. Hey, you might want to reboot that edge device there. Got it back on. But I think that collaboration is important. I think that the whole
ultimately, and I think even through the rules of engagement would help define some of those elements of what needs prior permission, or what are the tactics, techniques I can utilize in terms of this process. And then that allows us to kind of share that information. Yeah, you're good up until this level. You hit this layer of our infrastructure or this particular subnet, whatever it happens to be. Maybe back up a little bit. That's critical production.
That's OT.
Exactly. If you get there, let me know. Let's have a stand up, and we can talk about that. But ultimately, it's. I think you get to a level of communication where it becomes comfortable. And when I say comfortable, is you don't mind sharing the tactics that you're using, and we don't mind understanding that you're using them, because we want to test the underlying infrastructure. Ultimately, though, it becomes this, I'll give you the coin toss that I do. So every few years, I don't tell anybody that you're coming in. And then everybody's going, high alert, oh, we're being attacked. I said, okay, let's calm down. But I know what's going on. It's Chris, it's my buddy, he's doing this. And then ultimately, it's... but then I pay for that, right? We should know we have this, but I'm testing incident response at the same time,
right?
And I'm testing in our alert capability. And then if you say no one said anything, and I've got Bloodhound running in this infrastructure, and I've just mapped your entire AD infrastructure, and I've, we'll do a little Cooper roasting at night over the fire, then that's not going to be a good thing. And I think that gets us to a place where it's where we're then comfortable in terms of managing that approach. And again, just better together.
So we got just maybe 2 minutes left. Anything you want to leave the crowd with?
Yeah. No, I think it's. I hope it's opened your eyes, and I think that's the talk tomorrow. Yeah. But it's ultimately this: is information sharing is critical. If we need to get the best and maximize return on the investment of our penetration testing, We've got to share, we've got to be communicating. It's not just a report at the end of the day, it's your playbook for the next year of investment for risk mitigation, and really strategizing how you're going to make it harder for my buddy to come back the following year.
I love and hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Awesome.
Sean, thanks so much.
Chris, appreciate it.
Pleasure as always.
Thank you, sir.